Take it away, Megan.
Thanks, Maddie, and thank you everybody for joining me today to make an amigurumi crochet Casey the cow. So what we're going to be doing together today comes from a kit. It's a loops and threads kit that you can get just at Michael's, only at Michael's. And it has all the different kits have lots of different things. There's a zebra, there's a unicorn, there's a bumblebee, there's a house plant. There's lots of different both animals and other kind of objects that you can crochet using these kits. They're all intermediate kits. So I'm kind of assuming today that people who are here with me, and you can tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I think that people here with me, if you know how to single crochet and double crochet in just a couple of those very basic crochet stitches, and you're maybe not really familiar with reading patterns or maybe haven't ever put them together to make anything 3D like this amigurumi cow, this is the class for you. So if you know how to do a little bit of crochet, but maybe need a little bit of help with the pattern, and maybe need a little help with some of the sewing and some of the extra details of actually making an object or making some little stuffed animal, then this is the right class for you. So let me know in the chat if any of you here with me live right now have the kit. The kit is available on michaels.com. It's also available in the stores. We know that some of the inventory is running low, which is a good thing for us, but we also know that people want it. So know that it's coming, and in the next 2 weeks we're definitely going to have more in stock. So if you weren't able to get it before this class is going to go up onto YouTube, and then you'll be able to come back, and if you start your kit and find yourself with some issues or find yourself getting stuck at some point in the kit, you can come back to this video and I can help you kind of problem solve. So today, Casey the cow, we won't be able to make the whole cow because this whole project, I would say it's a weekend project, especially if you're relatively new at crocheting. If you have some basic skills, it might take you maybe 2 days of kind of working a couple hours, a couple of TV shows in order to get it finished. They say in the instructions about 8 hours. Of course, that depends on your skill level. So it could be more, it could be less, but this is a really adorable crochet amigurumi cow to get yourself started. So let's switch over to my other camera and I'm going to show you what's in the kit and why this kit is awesome. All the kits have names, so it's really cute. Even something like the snake plant, I think its name is like Sally the snake plant. And I just love that they all have their own names. I think that that's just a cute little touch. That's really, really cute. Bumblebee has a name. I don't know what the name is, but it's cute. What's nice about a kit is that if you were to crochet this using just a pattern that you found or a pattern that you purchased somewhere, you're going to have to buy a lot of different colors of yarn. You're going to have to buy a lot of these little notions with the eyes and the bell and having a sewing needle and having your crochet hook and everything like that. What's great about the kit is here's my polyfill. And here are all the different colors of yarn that I'm going to be using throughout the project. The kit comes with its own hook. And of course, it's the proper size hook to go with this particular amount of yarn, this particular type of yarn, and this particular pattern. We also have in this kit some of these plastic eyes. We have the cute little bell, and of course we have our sewing needle. So having all of this in this kit together is really a huge savings. If you were to try and buy the supplies to make this by yourself, I think it would be a lot more expensive. The kit altogether with all of this in here is only about $10. So you can't really beat it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the pattern. So I see someone in the chat says that they have the kit and they're a beginner and they just want to kind of understand the verbiage and the different stitches. So you are the perfect person. You are my perfect audience for today to kind of help you walk through and figure out what all of this means. So thank you for joining us. And if anybody else has any questions or want to tell me kind of where they are in this process, let me know. So if you know how to do a single crochet and a double crochet, I honestly think you can make this cow. So the rest, there are a couple of tricky bits, but those are things that I think I'm going to be able to walk you through. So if you are watching or if you are making and you don't have your kit yet, you're not going to have the pattern, and it's not something that I can give to you because it's something that comes with the purchase of this particular kit. But I can kind of talk you through some of these things so you can get started. Now, I do want to show you that by following the kit and following using the proper yarn, using the proper stitches, you can make this adorable cow. What's great about buying the kit and then now having this pattern is that I can then, like I said, go and buy some other colors of yarn, some other different pieces, and use that same pattern in order to make an even larger cow. So it's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but this cow, Maddie, do you mind switching to my other camera so I can kind of show the difference? So this is using a larger size hook and a larger size yarn. So you can make a much larger cow just by switching your hook size and switching your yarn. And when I end up putting these together, it's going to be a much bigger stuffed animal. So imagine if I used a yarn that's even bigger than this yarn that I'm using and a hook that's even larger than a J, and I can make something even bigger than the original one. A mama and a baby. Oh my God, I love that. Such a great idea. All right, let's switch back and I'm going to get you started with some of the basics. So on the first side of your instructions, it shows you all your different abbreviations. And some of these are very normal crochet abbreviations, and some of these are very specific to this kit. So these abbreviations right here are talking about the different yarn colors that come in your kit. So we have a white yarn for most of Casey's body. We have a tan yarn, which is this little bit amount right here. We have a brown yarn and we have a black yarn. So these CA, CB, CC, CD things can be a little bit tricky, but there is this color code right here. Also on the back, handy at the top, when you're actually working on the pattern, they remind you of what the different color yarns stand for also. And they're going to tell you some other bits of information. So I do think the head is probably the most challenging part of this. I think the head and the legs, if anybody else has started this kit, I think those are the two things that people might have the most problems with. So if you are having problems with the head or the legs, you might even want to skip around to something else like the body, the ears, or the horn. Give yourself some wins. Go ahead and get yourself started on something that you're going to feel good about being able to do, and then come back when you're feeling more confident to something like this. So with the head, we're going to begin the round with CB. And I told you that CB stands for tan yarn. So I'm going to get my tan yarn and I'm going to get the hook that's provided. It's a little tiny plastic hook, and I know that might be difficult for some of us to work with, but honestly, if you use a larger size, you're not going to have enough yarn to be able to create the whole cow. Also, this kit, just so that you know, we use a lot of white, and so this kit tends to run out of white before any of the other colors. So when you're making a tail with your white, you don't want to leave your tail very long because we don't have a lot of extra when it comes to the white. The other colors seem to have plenty, but white runs a little bit short just because we use so much of it. So I'm going to start off, and I am going to go ahead and do the first part of this pattern. And what I'm doing on the first part of this pattern is I'm making this little muzzle for the cow. And then I'm going to show you a color change and how you're going to add the white. And then these little green markers right here are marking where I'm going to eventually put the eyes. So the eyes are pretty far up on the cow's head, but it really makes for a cute little cow. You can move them down or you can move them closer or further apart if you want, but I think it's pretty cute the way that it is. So we're making this little muzzle part right here, and we're starting kind of in the round and kind of building out. You can kind of see how that's going to go into that oval shape. So the first part is a little bit weird, but there is, of course, a reason why we're doing it, and it's going to help us make that perfect shape to start off for our cow. So if you don't already know how to do a slip knot, that's going to be one of your first challenges. But for me and my slip knots, I like to point to myself and drape my yarn over. Here's my working yarn, which is attached to the skein. Here's my tail. I like to grab both of these with my left hand, and then I twist my finger, go inside of that little loop with my pinchers, grab the working yarn, and I have a slip knot. Lots of ways to do a slip knot. That's just one. And then on this pattern, it says that we're going to use CB, tan yarn, and we're going to chain 6. So the first step is to go ahead and chain 6. So again, I'm assuming that people know how to hold their yarn and how to hold their hooks. If you don't have that kind of basic information, then you are going to need to go back and teach yourself a couple of extra tricks. So Maddie might be able to throw a couple of suggestions in the chat of how you can teach yourself how to make chain stitches and how to do single crochets and some of those basics. So I'm going to chain 6. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's a pretty small hook and a pretty small yarn. But you can see I have these 6 different stitches, and each stitch is made up of a V shape. And so I have 6 of these here. And in the pattern, it now says 3 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. So right next to my hook, I don't want to go into this spot because I'm going to end up undoing what I have. So I'm not using the first chain right next to the hook. I'm using the second chain that's right next to the hook. And then the directions tell me to do 3 single crochets into that same space. So once I have it over my hook, I yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both. That's 1 single crochet. In the same spot, I go through with my hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Fell off my hook. Make sure I get all my fibers. There we go. And 1 more single crochet into that same spot. Put the hook in, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over, pull both through. So I have a chain of 6, and I have 3 single crochets into the second chain from the hook. So that's how I'm reading this pattern. Now it says that I need a single crochet in the next 3 chains. So in each one of these next 3 chains, I'm going to split that V with my hook, and I'm going to put in a single crochet. So this is where I just was. Here's my next spot. I'm splitting that V with my hook, and I'm doing a single crochet. I'm going to the next chain. I'm doing a single crochet, and I'm going to 1 more chain, and I'm doing a single crochet. All right. Now it says that in the last chain, we're going to do 3 single crochets into that last chain. So in this last space I have right here, I'm going to put 3. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of building up this very center, and it almost kind of ends up looking a little bit like the cow's nostrils. So if you can see that on this one, you might have 2 little tiny holes right here from where we're turning, but it really just kind of makes for the cow's nostrils anyway. So I kind of like that part of the pattern. So now I'm going to put 3 single crochets into this last portion on the end. Here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. All right, and then my pattern tells me to turn. So here's how I have been working with my crochets going across the top. I'm turning my work this way. And when I turn my work this way, you're going to see that extra kind of like little loop. And we're going to put a couple of single crochets into these loops. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build up to 12 stitches. So it says that in the remaining loops on the opposite side, which is this top portion right here, that's a little bit flatter than where we just put our stitches, we are going to single crochet in the next 3 loops. So here's a loop. I'm going to single crochet. Here's 1 single crochet. In the next loop, I'm going to put my hook into here and do a single crochet. And I'm going to put my hook into this last loop and do a single crochet. And then at the end of your rounds, they tell you after this little dash how many stitches you should have. So at the end of round 1, we should have 12 stitches, and then we're going to place a marker. So I do like to count at the end of my rounds just to make sure I'm on the right track. So I'm going to count, and each one of these little V's counts as a stitch. So here's my first stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I know that I have the right base. If you don't have 12 at this point, I would honestly start over because you just want to have that basic stitch with the right number, because you don't want to mess up your number at the very beginning of your work, because it's just going to keep kind of haunting you. So stitch markers, there are plastic stitch markers that you can purchase. They do not come with this kit, but that's because you can really use anything for a stitch marker. I take a little tiny piece of pipe cleaner, and in this V, right behind where my hook is, that's where I'm going to put my stitch marker. So I just fold over a little piece of pipe cleaner. You can fold over a little piece of yarn. You can use an actual plastic stitch marker or a metal stitch marker. You can use anything like that. So now that I have my 12 stitches and I've done my place marker, I'm already on round 2. And round 2 says I'm going to do 2 single crochets in each of the next 3 stitches, which is how I'm going to increase. So I'm going to be increasing the number of stitches from 12 up to 18. And the way I'm going to be doing that is by doing 2 single crochets instead of just 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. So here's my first stitch. And what's a little bit different right now than what I was doing before is this time when I go through with my hook, notice how I took both parts of the V. So I didn't split the stitch, I took the whole entire stitch. So right now I technically have 3 loops on my hook. Then I yarn over, pull through the stitch, yarn over, pull through the bottom 2. That's 1 single crochet in that spot, so I need to do another single crochet in the same spot. So pull through the whole entire stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and we're doing that in the next 3 stitches. So 2 single crochets in this next stitch. Here's 1, here's 2, oops, and here's 2 single crochets in the third stitch. Here's 1, and here's 2. So we've done 2 single crochets in each of the next 3 stitches, which increase the number of stitches that we have going around. And so then the next part of this round is to do a single crochet in the next 3 stitches. So now that we've increased, we don't need to increase every single stitch. We just wanted to increase those ones that are on the sides. So now I'm going to go through the whole stitch and I'm going to do a single crochet in the next 3. Here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. I sometimes, if you are working off a pattern, sometimes I like to write the pattern down on a piece of paper also, so that I can almost kind of make it into a checklist. So I chained 6, I did 3 single crochets into the second chain, I did my single crochets. This is all the things that I did to complete round 1. So if you kind of like this checklist system, you can always kind of take these and write them down onto a pattern. So there's not a pattern that I can share with you because this is a kit. You have to purchase the kit in order to get the pattern, but feel free to kind of be watching with us as we go, and you can kind of get a head start if you don't already have the kit and kind of get some of this written down for yourself. Okay, so I did a single crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then I'm going to do 2 single crochets in each of the next 3 stitches. So I'm going to be increasing again. So in the next 3 stitches, I'm doing 2 single crochets. Here's 1, here's 2, going to the second stitch and doing 2 single crochets. And this is right around the corner of the mouth. So I'm increasing it around the corner. And here's the third one where we're putting 2 single crochets into this third stitch. All right. And then it says a single crochet in the next 3. So we have 1, 2, and where my stitch marker is marks the third one. And that means that I have completed the round and I should have 18 stitches at that point. So here is 1, 2, 3. So now that you have that process of increasing, from now on in the directions, instead of saying to put 2 single crochets in a stitch, they're just going to start using the word increase. So from here on in the pattern where it says in bold that you made an increase, that's how you made an increase. And now instead of saying that over and over again, they're just going to use the abbreviation INC to represent adding 2 single crochets instead of just 1 every time like that into the pattern. So I am back to where I started, and I should have 18 stitches, and I am going to take the time to count them and make sure that I'm correct since I'm so close to the beginning. I go through and I count, I look for my V's. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Perfect. And I'm ready to begin round 3. And round 3 has an interesting part of the pattern too, if you're not familiar with crochet patterns. So we have these brackets, and inside the brackets, it tells you to repeat that instruction 2 times. So when you see brackets in a pattern like this, it's saying take all of this stuff and do it a certain number of times so that obviously they don't have to keep writing the same thing over and over and over again. They use that kind of bracket system. So inside of the brackets, it says to increase in the next stitch. So they're not telling us, but we know now that an increase means 2 single crochets. So here's my stitch marker. Here's the stitch right behind where my hook is. I'm just going to slip in this little piece of pipe cleaner. And I'm starting round 3 where it says increase in the next stitch. So that means that this next stitch gets 2 single crochets. 1, 2. And then it says to single crochet in the next 3 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3. It says to increase in the next stitch. So I'm putting 2 single crochets into this stitch right here. Here's 2 single crochets into it. And then instead of 3 in the next 4 stitches this time. So here's 1, 2, 3. Losing track of my loop. Happens. There we go. And 3. Is that 3? One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. And then the 4th one. So you can see how I easily could have lost track. So now that I'm done with that whole entire bracket, it says to do that whole bracket one more time. So that means I go back to this beginning part where it says increase in 1 and then single crochet in 3. So I'm going to increase in the next stitch by putting in 2 single crochets. Here's 1. Here's 2. And then I'm going to single crochet in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2. This teeny hook is getting me. Here we go. 2, 3. And then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. 1, 2 in that same stitch. That gave me an increase. And then I'm going to single crochet in the next 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4 lands me right back to where I need to be. So here is 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to move my stitch marker so I can do my 4th one and my final one of that round. So now I've completed round 3, and you've kind of seen a couple of the interesting things with the pattern of being able to work with that. So you have these brackets, and when you have those brackets, that means to repeat that whole section a certain number of times. Those brackets are going to come back up in round 9. They're going to show back up a couple more times. Another thing on the head that you're going to need to know about are decreases. So in the same way that they taught you how to make an increase up here on round 2, in round 19, they're going to show you how to make a decrease so that you can start closing up the head. And then once you have learned how to make the decrease, they start using that abbreviation, DEC, over and over again. And I'm going to switch over because this obviously is the starter of where you can see what I was talking about a little bit, like those look like kind of little nostrils right there, which I think is kind of fun too. But once you have that spot, let me find one of my other pieces I have. So then you keep going and you're going to need to learn how to change colors. And we're going to change colors from the brown to the white and then build up some space in order to get to the stitch where we actually start putting in the eyes around round 13. So yeah, Maddie's putting in the chat some good information. What's great about the kit is now you have access to the pattern. And so you can use different size hooks. You can use different size yarn. You can use your favorite kind of yarn. So it's nice to get you started and it's nice to have everything in one place. But yeah, once you start getting good at what you're doing, you sometimes like to step your game up. So you're feeling free to change it up. Now I'm jumping from the piece that we were just working on, and I'm going to move to a larger hook, larger yarn, because I want to be able to you to be able to see what I'm about to do. And basically, I'm taking what I was just doing and I'm several steps down and I'm about to switch and change to CA. So it says I'm going to change to CA in the last stitch and I should end up with 36 stitches. This is on round 6. And what that means is that CA is our white yarn. So I'm going to switch from the brown yarn to the white yarn. And there are some pretty good instructions right here at the top about how to switch colors. There are lots of ways in crochet to be able to switch your colors. So this is just one suggestion of how to color change. But if you are someone who crochets a lot and you already have a good method that you're used to, you should definitely use that one. So if I were at that 36 stitches, which I think I just lost one, so I'm going to do one more single crochet. There we go. And then if I'm about to switch colors, here's how the color change works. So it says to insert your hook into the next stitch. So I'm going to pretend like I'm going to do this next stitch with the brown and I'm inserting my hook. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull a loop of the brown. So I yarned over and pulled a loop of the brown. But before I switch my, before I finish my single crochet, I'm going to pull a loop of the new color. So what that means is that right here, I'm going to put this little tiny loop of the new color, and that's just me folding that yarn over and making that loop. And then all I need to do is pull that new color through the two that are already on my hook. And you can pull some of these to kind of tighten down that stitch that we just made. So you might want to see that again. So let me back that up. So here, when I was done with my brown stitches, I'm going to go into the next one as if I'm going to do a brown stitch right there. And I'm going to yarn over, which is the first part of a single crochet. But instead of finishing the single crochet, I'm going to grab a hoop or a loop of the next color and pull it through both of those two. And then I'm just going to carry on with this new color going into the next stitch. So I'm going to do a single crochet in the next stitch with that new color. And I'm just going to keep going with that new color. And in the pattern, it says to go around with this new color, all 36 of these stitches. And then you just keep going from there. And at some point, you'll need to take a second and go ahead and trim down the brown, especially if it's still connected to a skein or still connected to the things that you're working with. So I can go ahead and give that a little trim, leave a little bit of a tail just in case. But now I'm working with my next color of yarn and I'm just going to keep going all the way around. And pretty soon you won't be able to see much of a difference. So here's where my color change happened here. So you can kind of tell if you pay super close attention to it that I changed color right here. But overall, in the whole look and feel of the cow, I don't think many people are going to notice that. So feel free to do that. Also with the head, there are a couple of other things that happen towards the end. So towards the end, after you have added that white color and you continue to stitch through several times, there's a spot where it says in round 13 to mark your eyes. So again, I'm using my cute little pipe cleaners to mark the eyes. You don't want to put the plastic eyes in right away because you don't have enough space behind it to secure those. You can't just put the eyes in. They need to kind of be put in after you have a bit of stuff to work with. So if you like this, once you get to that round 13 where you're gonna do some single crochets and then put in a marker, do some more, put in a marker, that's where your 2 eyes are gonna be. And then once you have several more rounds, you get down to round 23 where it starts talking about adding in the eyes and adding in the nostrils. So I'm going to show you what you can do with those. In this cute little baggie, we have our 2 black eyes, and these are teeny tiny eyes because it goes with kind of the cuteness of this cow for the eyes to be real cutesy and teeny tiny. But you might have saw before when I held it up, I went ahead and used larger yarn. And then Michaels also sells these larger size eyes. They come in brown and they come in blue. So if you want your eyes to be larger than the ones that come with that, it's another one of those upgrades that you can use a different yarn, you can use different eyes, you can use different colors. But once you have that pattern, it's kind of yours to play around with. So these are called safety eyes. And they're called safety eyes because we don't want kids to rip them off and choke on them. So once I put this little plastic plunger on that, it's really hard for somebody to pull this plunger back off, especially a child. So I'm taking it the curved side of this plunger towards the little screw part, and I'm pushing this nice and tight. And then that's going to secure that eye and keep it from going anywhere. And this back keeps it from just popping off and being a choking hazard. Then I'm going to go to the other side where my marker is, and I'm going to do the same thing where I just push that little button through, and then I find the second plastic plunger to keep it nice and secure on the back. So I'm using the curved side of the plunger towards the work, and then that will keep that nice and secure there too. So these are the 2 eyes that I've just added. And I will eventually put stuffing into this head too, and just give it kind of some more form. But all the different increasing and decreasing kind of gives you the little bit of contour of the cow's face, which I think is a really cool part of this pattern. So it also says in this section to use some black yarn and stitch through the nostrils. So if some of you are not as familiar with doing some sewing in your crochet projects, I want to kind of show you how that works with a little bit of yarn and a little bit of black yarn and a plastic yarn needle. So this yarn needle comes with the kit, which again is really helpful. You can buy them on your own, but it's nice that they all come in one place and it's nice and easy. So all you need to do with this yarn needle is go ahead and thread the end of your black yarn through. You don't need a ton of black yarn. Probably less than 12 inches is just fine. And then they don't tell you exactly where to go with your nostrils, so this is kind of your best guess. But I like to kind of see where I think those nostrils are. So like here are those 2 round holes that I see right here. And then I like to go maybe below that hole and above that hole. So I'm just poking my needle through from the bad side to the good side and just doing about 3 or 4 stitches up before I push it back down. And I'm just making a straight line like that. Then on the back of my work, I can go over to where the other hole is on the other side, and I can kind of mimic that exact same stitch and then try and keep it even or as even as you can. And you can decide if you want your nostrils to be bigger or smaller. You can double up, so I could thread it through twice if I really wanted them to stand out. But I actually like them just the way they are. So then I am ready to just tie this off. And all of this that's inside of this head right now is going to be where the stuffing will be. So all of this will be hidden. So there's a question that's in the chat. I want to make sure I answer. It's hard to see where the anti-choking plastic piece is inside the bowl first or outside of the bowl. I think I know what you're talking about. When you're putting the plastic piece on, the bowl, the like curved part, what I think you're talking about, is going towards your work. So it's like capturing the top piece into the bowl. Hopefully that helps you. So the wider part is going to be touching the fabric. Yep. And the shorter part is going to be closer to like the points. Hopefully that helps. Good. And then I have my cute little nostrils, and I did just tie these off in a knot. I can trim these little tails down, or I can leave them because all of this is going to eventually be inside of my work. And when I get a little bit further, so after I add the eyes and nose in, then I do a little bit, or actually it is at this point when I'm adding the eyes and nose in that I can use that polyfill. So here's our little bag of polyfill. It looks small, but believe me, it is mighty. So when I open this up, it does expand, and you do want to kind of fluff it. So go ahead and kind of pull some of those fibers apart and fluff it a bit. And you can stuff it into the back of your head. And probably a little less than half of the bag is what you want to use in the head, because you'll have the head, you'll have the main portion of the body, and then just a tiny little bit of stuffing in some of the other places. So if you use about a third of the bag on the head, I think you're safe. You can probably use a little bit more than that because it might be the most fun part to stuff. But you can kind of play around with that. And then once you are continuing with this, you get down, I don't think I ended up finishing this all the way, but you get down to about 8 stitches. I can show you on this one. So you get down to 8 stitches at the very end. That's the end of the head. And then it doesn't really tell you, I mean, I think it's assumed in the finishing, but they don't really tell you that once you have these 8, what you're going to want to do is kind of pull them together like a little drawstring to kind of close up that circle. So if I were taking my yarn needle, and I see somebody asking about a decrease, so yeah, I'll show you that too. So if I put this little tail through, I can go through each one of these 8 stitches. So I'm going to go from the outside, in, outside, in, and I'm kind of making what I call a little drawstring. I doubled up this yarn by accident. I can still do it that way. There we go. My tail was super long. And I'm going through each one of these 8 stitches. I'm going from the outside towards the inside, outside towards the inside of each of the 8. And then when I get back to the beginning, I kind of just gently pull these. And when I gently pull these, I can kind of close that off and make a really nice back for my cow. So the back of the cow, once you have those last 8 stitches, just kind of stitch those together and pull that very softly and gently. And then you can kind of hide that tail into it. I would do a knot. I'd probably tie off a knot, and then I like to hide my stuff. So you can just really go for it. I stitch all the way across so that I hide my tail in here. And then you can pull this pretty tight and cut. And then see how the tail kind of disappeared into the face. And so you can't see that tail anymore, which is awesome. So this is so cute. It's going really well. And so let me see if I can find something for decreasing. I might just play along with this one and kind of pretend in order to show you the decrease, even though that's not quite where I am on this one. But I want to show you. So let's see what I can do. Might need to add on some more yarn. I think I will. This is not a color change in the pattern, but this is me color changing just so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm adding in this new color to kind of be able to show you a decrease, and for me to know that this is not really a real part of this pattern. And so that if I go back and undo this, I know where to go back to. so that I can go back to having the stuff that's already finished. All right. Okay, so let's pretend that we are on round 19. And in round 19, it says in brackets to single crochet in the next 8 stitches. And then it has this weird abbreviation, SC2TOG. And what that means is single crochet together. So you're putting 2 single crochets together, which is decreasing 2 down into 1. So that's how you make a decrease, is by doing the 2 single crochets together. So let's say my next stitch is where I'm going to put the 2 single crochets together. So the way that you put 2 single crochets, these next 2 I'm going to combine into 1 crochet, is by going into the stitch. So the whole stitch is on my hook, yarn over, and pull through. Now, instead of finishing the single crochet, I go directly into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through. I have 3 loops of yarn on my hook. I yarn over and pull over all 3 of those. And what I've just done, all 3 of them, is I have taken these 2 crochet stitches and I've combined them down into just 1 stitch. So I'm going to show that again. Let me just single crochet. That's a full single crochet. Now here's me decreasing by putting these 2 together. Go through the stitch, yarn over, pull through, go through the next stitch, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops, so you yarn over, pull through all 3, and you have decreased those 2 into just this 1 stitch. So then from now on, in the rest of the pattern, anytime you see the word decrease, just like the increase meant put 2 single crochets, decrease means take 2 and turn them into 1. So you're decreasing by 1 each time, or you're increasing by 1 each time, depending on which part of the pattern you're on. So I hope that that helped with your question. I'm going to show one more time. I'm going into this one, yarn over, pull through, go into the next one, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3, and I've decreased. And that's going to keep decreasing the number of stitches. And make sure that you check at the end of each one of your rounds in order to help you stay on track. Now, if you get very far in and you end up with 32 stitches instead of 33 or something like that, you can always add an extra stitch in or take an extra stitch away if you need to. You can kind of fudge it a little bit if you don't care about it being absolutely perfect. If you do care about it being absolutely perfect, we all know from crocheting that we all think we know how to count until we start crocheting. And then all of a sudden I can't count to 4 anymore, or I will count to 5 instead of 4. So we all have made those mistakes before. You can just gently rip that work out and go back to where you are. Also, it's helpful to have that stitch marker so that I can go back to where I know for sure I had the right number of stitches, and I can undo until I get to that stitch marker, because I knew I was right when I was right here, but now somewhere along the line I lost track, or I was too into whatever show I was watching or something, a conversation, and then I lost track. So that's a lot of the information about the head. I don't know, we have about 15 minutes left together, and I don't know if the people who are with me live, if any of you have any specific questions or specific spots that you want to talk about. I do think the head is pretty challenging, so I'm glad we went through a lot of that together. The body is going to be much easier. The ears, horns, spots, those are all pretty easy also. Maybe if you want to give me a hint, if you want me to either go over the legs or go over some of the finishing things, I don't know which one of those is going to be more helpful to you. We can talk about, I don't know if you need help sewing things together or if you need help making the legs. If there's no opinion, then if you have not left enough tail, great question. So I did tell you at the beginning that the white yarn is pretty close to the exact amount. So if you accidentally use too much or something, you could potentially run out. So one suggestion I have regarding the white yarn is that when it tells you at the end of something to leave a tail for sewing, I would not leave a very long tail when it comes to the white. So for example, let's say that I only leave this amount. So even if I'm going to be sewing, that's not enough for me to be able to do any sewing with, but I'm just going to leave a small white tail because I can always go back, and if I have other white yarn or if I have something else that might look the same, or if I have extra scraps from cutting off something else, then I can use those for sewing. So I can just take any extra scrap that I have, and when it comes to the sewing, it's just a matter of putting it onto your needle. And you don't need to do anything special to get started. I sometimes will tie a knot, but not at the very beginning. There we go. So if I'm doing some sewing, let's say that I'm trying to attach this to this for some reason. I don't know. Maybe that's what it's telling me to do. So there is a spot. Actually, I think I have something already created somewhere on my desk where you make a spot and then you end up putting the spot. I have hooves, I have legs, but I don't have a spot. So funny. On the cow, you make two little black spots and then you sew them on to the white body. So let's pretend like that's what I'm doing here. And let's pretend like this is one of my spots. I'm just going to take the color yarn that goes with it. And I'm always going to start on the inside, the part where I'm going to be hiding something. And so when I'm doing my sewing, before I tying a knot here is kind of useless because it's crochet and it's just going to pull through there. But if I do another stitch or go up through a little bit further, then when I have both sides of my yarn on the inside, that's when I actually tie a knot. So this is me kind of doing one of those finishing sewing kind of techniques. So go through 2 different stitches before you bother trying to tie a knot. And now I have all of this yarn to kind of use to stitch around. So the placement of the dot is up to you. They don't tell you exactly where you put it, but you can kind of look at the picture and get a good idea. And I'm doing like a little whip stitch, which means I'm going into a couple stitches deep into the spot. And then I'm going like around it, basically, is what a whip stitch is like. And I should use the same color thread or the same color yarn so that you don't see it. You can see mine just a tiny bit because I have a little bit of a different color. And then once I get all the way around that spot and I have it nice and secured, then I go back to wherever the beginning stitch is. So I would take the time to do all of this. And then I would definitely need to go through, and I can either go back to the beginning or just kind of go through one of my stitches and help myself make a knot, or go through another stitch just for extra security and make a knot. So it's kind of messy, but it doesn't matter because all of that is on the inside. And then you can cut this tail however you want to. So that's a lot of that sewing kind of stuff, like that whip stitch I was showing you, is just kind of going around in order to attach that spot onto the body. And you can kind of see some of my black stitches. I think I had the spot and it told me to leave an extra tail for sewing after the spot, leave a tail for sewing. So I used that black tail. With your white, if you leave your tail for sewing, and let's say something like this happens where maybe I didn't have enough white, you can always add more white to any yarn needle and kind of add a couple extra stitches to make that nice and secure so that his poor little leg, or her poor little leg, doesn't fall off. All right, let's talk some more about finishing. Ooh, dropped my hook. All right, so it says to use the photo or the illustration to place some of the different pieces. So some of the different pieces that you are going to create these are the ears, and the ears end up looking a little triangular. And so you do have a tail, and feel free with all the other colors besides white to leave as long of a tail as you want, and you're going to have plenty of material for those. Those will not be tight at all. Then once you have your ear, You can choose to put a little bit of stuffing in it if you want to, or if you want it to be floppy, that's kind of up to you. But then I'll use whatever tail I have with my sewing needle, and I'm going to sew up this little triangle. So I'm kind of closing it off because right now it's open. So I'm closing it off by doing kind of a stitch where I go from side to side. And this is also like a whip stitch, and it's kind of giving me around it. So I'm going from side to side and pulling around. And I'm closing this off. If you wanted any stuffing, you should put it in before you finish closing it off. And then once I have that side sewn up and finished, I can keep using this exact same piece, and I can go to my head and I can kind of see where I want to place it and decide where I want to place it. And then it's just a matter of me taking my needle through and going through some of the white, grabbing some more of this black and pushing through those in order to start connecting the white and the black together. Now that's not strong enough. That's definitely not going to hold up. So you want to go through another stitch or two. So maybe find a different stitch to come down through and to come up through. There you go. And after you've done several stitches and you feel pretty good about how it's going, then you can kind of find a way to tie it off. So let me add maybe 2 more just to make sure that I feel like it's good and secure. It's got enough hold to it that it's not going to fall off. And then you can tie a knot lots of different ways. I'm going to do 1 knot right here. And then I'm going to take my yarn through and do another knot. And at this point, another little trick, let me grab one of my hooks, is to come through the head from a different angle and grab that thread pretty close to where my ear is. And I can kind of tuck that tail in. So I just kind of scooped it and threw it into the stuffing. And now you can't see that black thread, or maybe you can, but I don't think so. I could hide it pretty well. So this is attaching the ear, and you do that with both of the ears. Kind of looks almost like a little cute doggy ear, which is adorable. But then it also has a little horn, and the horn is what's going to turn it into a little bit more of your cow look to it. So you can decide whether or not you want any stuffing in this horn. And then the horn has a tail in the same way as the other ones. I see a question in the chat, so I'll get to that as soon as I'm done with this horn. And since the horn is a little bit rounder, it's not just attaching at one place, I'm going to kind of do a few stitches around it. So I'm going to place it. I'm going to go through one of the bottom layers of stitches. Sorry, went off the screen. And I'm going to go through and kind of connect some of those white stitches to the brown stitches. Probably about 6 or more stitches would be nice. And if I run out of tail, I just tie off a knot and grab a little bit more of that same color tail and just start a new piece of yarn on my needle. And when I feel like I've gotten this pretty secure, then I'm going to go ahead and start tying off a knot and tie a knot through a stitch to make it stay. There we go. And so now I have this horn. I can hide this tail by just poking it through, grabbing it with my hook, and hiding that tail. You can also cut it down, but I tend to like to hide tails rather than cut them down. And now you have an adorable little horn to go with the adorable little ear. And so let me answer this last question in the chat, and then we'll kind of wrap things up together. So the question in the chat says about the increase again. So on line 6, I don't know if you mean round, I think you mean round 6, but you can tell me. it says single crochet in the next 4 stitches, increase. At this point, that means to increase in the next 3 stitches, since that's how we've been increasing. So let me try and answer that. So this little bracket says to single crochet in the next 4 stitches and then increase. So you're doing 4 single crochets, and then in the 5th stitch, you're putting 2 single crochets in there. And then you're going to do it again where you do 4 more single stitches. And then in your 5th one again, you're going to put 2 single crochets into that. So I hope that that answers your question. But what that means is, yes, you already know how to increase. And increase just means to put 2 single crochets instead of 1 into that spot. So the first 4 are just going to be normal, and the 5th one is going to have 2 in it. And then you're going to do that whole thing again. Do 4 more, and the 5th one has 2 in it again. So I hope that answers your question. And then Maddie, we can switch back to my front camera and wrap things up. So this has been our Loops and Threads crochet kit. These are available at Michael's. These are only available at Michael's, so it's a very special kit for you to grab. And you can make this adorable cow that we've been working on together. So if you haven't grabbed your kit yet, you can still order them. You can still pick them up at the store. And then feel free to come back to this video and watch it again on YouTube, so that hopefully if you get stuck at any of these points during the pattern, you can kind of pick this video up and see if it can help you. There's also an email at the bottom of the pattern that says need help. And you can, it says help@askacrafter.com. And so they can offer some feedback for you too if you get stuck on a certain part of the pattern. But I'm so glad that so many of you have joined us. And I think that I've answered all of the questions just in the 5th stitch. Yep. So I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye.